Welcome back to another volume of truly disturbing tales from Reddit. Today we're going to be narrating 3 new unsettling stories, taken directly from the platform. I encourage you all to sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy these terrifying personal accounts. Now, without any further delay, let's jump right in. So about 2 years ago, I was 14 at the time, and at my mom's house. It was just us two. Now my mom at the time was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and was essentially in a drug-induced coma. Nothing could wake her up. I had decided to take a bath while she slept. My bathroom door was locked, as was my mother's bedroom door, as she seemed to think that we didn't know about her addictions, and kept it locked so we wouldn't find out. So the entire house was more or less silent. I had only been in the bath for about half an hour before I heard my front door open. I assumed that it was my eldest sister coming back from work, and no one else would just walk in. But I wanted to be sure, so I texted her. Immediately, I got a worried text saying that, "No, I'm not home. Why? Is someone there?" I froze. I could hear footsteps. Now, our house was small, 1 story, and from the front door to the bathroom door, there was only a small living room between the two. I heard a weird scraping noise coming up the hallway towards the bathroom. I heard the scraping stop outside the bathroom door, and then someone grabbed the doorknob and kept turning it very slowly, side to side, for about a minute. The entire time I was silent, frozen in position, yet still shaking like a leaf. I wanted to call my mom and ask if it was her, but I didn't want whoever it was to hear the sound and then go towards my mom. After a while, I didn't hear anything more. I stayed in the bath for what I think was another hour, until I heard the front door open and click shut softly. I stayed posted in the bath long after the water had gone cold, until I heard my sister come in and yell if I was here and if I was okay. She quickly followed up with, "Why is the door unlocked?" I got out of the bath and heard her gasp before I had come out. But when I did, I swear my blood went cold. There was a line spanning the wall of the hallway, where the paint had been cut, like someone had trailed something sharp along the wall. Currently, the leading theory is that that sharp thing and the scraping noise I heard was someone dragging a knife against the wall. Who it was, I have no idea. I'd like to say with all resolve that I know for a fact our door was locked, but thinking back on it, I truly can't recall. I'm thankful that nothing else came of that night, beyond the fright that I experienced, and please believe that now I double, even triple check the locks before I go anywhere beyond the front door. This happened when I was 10. I'm female, dark brown hair, and tan skin. Average height, just so you get the full picture. Considering my age and build, I would not have fought back particularly well had something happened at the time. At this point, I lived with my mom and younger brother, who must have been 7 or 8. We all lived in a pretty secure area of town, and what's more, our apartment had a security guard. To get into the lobby, he had to buzz you in, unless you had your own key card. The elevator was activated by a key card too, so either you had your own, or the security guard would have to key you in. There was also a small screen inside of our apartment, with a button to call security if needed. This made us feel safe to some extent, but my mom is a very cautious person, and is always aware of her surroundings as well. We were moving at the time, and we sold a lot of stuff, including our TV, a normal-sized flat screen thing. We couldn't take everything with us, so this had to go. Eventually a man, mid-30s or early 40s, got in touch expressing interest in our TV. He said he'd drop by our apartment the same day, and he did, just a little later than expected, at around 7 p.m. He does all the usual checks to see if it works properly, and eventually starts asking my mom about where my dad is. He lived abroad at the time. Then asks me questions like, where's my school? And how old am I? Being a naturally friendly person, I answer and end up telling him all about a field trip I took with my class to a beach. This comment seems to resonate with him, as he then asks if he can connect his phone to the TV and project images of the beach. He'd apparently been there before. My mom reluctantly agrees, and he does so. In the pictures, though, there's a pretty young woman. He says he's a photographer, and would I like to model for him sometime. This is the point my mom pulls me closer to her, frowning, and she politely declines. I don't suspect anything, and I am in fact excited and keep asking my mother to please let me model. She tells me to be quiet and doesn't sound one bit happy. He continues to talk about his photography and said that I would make a good model. On and on while I kept getting more and more eager, nagging my mom to let me do it. I had no idea of his intentions and was completely okay with the idea. I also noticed the woman in the photo was wearing a skimpy bikini thing, and since I really wanted to be grown up, you all remember what that felt like, I asked if I could wear one too. He looks me dead in the face and says yes. My mom, I could tell, was completely freaked out by this point. I suspected nothing, of course, and with childlike innocence, I asked him if I would get money. Again, he said yes, and kept encouraging me to pose for him. Looking back now, I feel terrible for my mom, who knew exactly what was going on, yet couldn't stop me. On top of all that, he told me repeatedly how good of a model I was, while I giggled through pose after pose, tossing my hair, arms up above my head, or hand on my hip. Creepy as hell thinking about it now. He's been there for over an hour. He says he's calling his friend to ask if he can buy the TV. But why would he do that? Who knows? He speaks with somebody on the phone for a bit, then says that he needs to call his wife this time. Again, we let him. When he hangs up, my mom asks if he wants the TV once more. He tries to start a random conversation to distract her, but it's really late, and we're getting tired. My mom calmly explains that it's late now, and our kids are tired, need to shower, and get to bed. At which point the guy says, "Oh, that's fine. They can do that. I don't mind." Then encourages us to go wash. Even I was creeped out by this point. My mom advised him that it was time to go, and that perhaps he could come back another day if he hadn't yet decided on the TV. He got pissed, insisting he stay because he wanted to check this or that feature on the TV. My mom stood her ground, but I saw that she was scared, alone with this creep, and 2 young children to boot. After a long argument, she turned to me telling me to go to my room with my brother. Needless to say, I didn't argue at this point. We went into my room and shut the door behind us. I heard the front door open and my mom telling him to leave or she'd call security. He again tried to stay, but she wasn't having any of this and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, get out of my apartment now or I'm calling security." He finally departed. My mom put us to bed. She probably didn't sleep well at all that night, and we thought that that would be the end of it. But the next day, he came back under the same pretext as before. By now, it was clear that he had absolutely no interest in the television, just in us. Security, knowing what had happened prior to that day, immediately called my mom to know if it was okay to let him through or not. I asked if it was the photographer guy again. My mom nodded before motioning me to be quiet. Then she told security that they weren't to let him in, thanked them for calling her first, and that was the end of it. Apparently he got aggressive with security when they tried to show him the door. I don't know if he tried anything after that, but I'll ask my mom what she remembers about the situation and post an update if I learn anything new. There is something innately wrong about a man who comes into a young mother's apartment, tries to recruit her kid for a bikini photo shoot, and worse, then refuses to leave. It's sinister and creepy, and even now, I don't like to think about what would have or could have happened that night. I went to college in Florida. After graduating, the first thing on my mind was getting out of there, so I made plans to move across the country and start a new life. 23 at the time, with all the options in the world. Everything was in order. I quit my job, and a friend of mine agreed to take over my lease. I'd been living alone in a townhouse since my previous roommate graduated, so my friend moved into the other bedroom while I was preparing to move out. About a week later, 10 p.m., the two of us were watching TV when there was a knock at the door. My friend got up to answer. He came back with a bag of food from a sandwich place, assuming that I'd ordered it. But I hadn't. We thought maybe it had been delivered to the wrong address. But there it was. My name and address on the receipt. The phone number on the receipt, however, was unfamiliar to me. I called the number, and someone answered, but they never spoke. I could only hear the ambient sounds of a room and breathing. I searched the phone number, and it appeared to be through an app. I convinced myself that this was some kind of prank or maybe a misunderstanding. A few nights later, another knock at the door. My friend insisted on answering again, and I heard him telling the delivery person that this was a mistake. Quote, "She doesn't live here anymore. No one ordered food to this address." The driver responded that they had taken the order themselves over the phone and spoken to a man who simply asked for the specials and ordered the first one. It was the same number on the receipt. I called once more, and again I heard someone listening on the other end. The deliveries kept coming every few nights. My move was delayed for unrelated reasons, and the longer I stayed, the more it began to really scare me. Why would someone do this? One time, I called the number after another delivery, with my friend sitting right next to me. The stranger picked up the phone as usual, but this time we heard a faint voice. "She definitely still lives there." Then abrupt silence. I didn't recognize the person speaking, but I realized that I shouldn't have been calling from my own number, and I never called again. My friend tried, but the person on the other end never spoke aside from that one instance. Eventually, most of the deliveries stopped, but someone continued harassing us for months in various ways. That phone number began calling at all hours of the day and night, sometimes 30 calls in a row. They usually called my phone, but called my friend sometimes as well. If we answered, they would immediately hang up and call once more. I began getting random friend requests on every social media platform, with messages such as, "Don't you remember meeting me at the party last night?" when I definitely hadn't left my house in a week. Most disturbingly, someone also started throwing eggs at the townhouse, which suggested the stalker was local and knew where I lived. Maybe he was watching every time a delivery was dropped off. Maybe he was watching other times too. The only thing I ever learned was that he knew I hadn't moved. By this point, I was staying inside as much as possible, but you have to leave the house sometimes. I was terrified until I finally moved and blocked the number. My friend elected not to take over my lease, but I was always thankful he stayed with me those last couple of months. This was about 8 years ago now, and I still don't have the faintest idea of who it could have been. My former coworkers and a few college friends knew I was moving, but I couldn't think of anyone who would have reason to keep track of whether or not I'd moved, and I didn't recognize their voice the one time I heard it. To this day, I refuse to answer unknown phone numbers or unexpected knocks at the door. Even contactless delivery gives me anxiety. I'm always half expecting them to show up again.